We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system.
That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
Welcome, friends. Today is a very special day because another big speech by Mark Davos. That is, Mark Carney said that the old world has passed. That is, now we will not have a return to the world of the 90s and 2000s, when American hegemony provided public goods such as sea lanes, global sea lanes, financial security, stability in the system, things like NATO, a secure security of international borders, where nobody can change borders by force, anti-piracy operations, anti-money laundering, and all kinds of things, the funding of the UN, World Bank, IMF, etc., things in which America used to take a lead. And here, the reason is that Canada itself has been threatened repeatedly. In fact, even in today's speech, Trump didn't like Carney's earlier speech, and he warned Carney that Canada is alive because of the US. So don't get too uppity. And I'm sure Carney's got the message. But Carney has been traveling the world, spent about 40% of his time abroad, over 60 traveling days itself, trying to sign new trade deals, and even as a strategic partnership with China. Of course, it's an economic partnership, so you can't really call it strategic, allowing electric vehicles, Chinese electric vehicles, to enter the Canadian market in exchange for Canadian agricultural goods entering China. But Carney's larger point is that, look, we need to increase our defense spendings, we need to become autonomous, and we need to make new alliances. That is a NATO, maybe without the US. That is, Canada and Europe have to join together, and middle powers like Canada, European countries, East Asian countries have to now figure out their own defense and also their own trading blocks and their own economic tariff zones. So Carney is giving the message home to the Europeans if they haven't still got it. But my point in this video is that Europe, I think, has got the message. And I've made videos earlier criticizing Europe and its approach. I have also made videos earlier about how a new world order is coming into being, and new blocks are going to form. I've given a video on how AI and the amount of investment required in AI is also going to end up creating new blocks. And I think finally, Europe has got the message, I think, because even Macron is talking similar stuff. He's saying that we'll have to figure out our way. And several of the smaller countries' leaders have also been talking this kind of stuff. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, unfortunately has still not gotten the message. He's still looking for a deal with the US. Keir Starmer is still talking about saving that 10% tariff deal that he had got last year, which was not signed. It has not been signed, by the way. So he's worried about it being sealed. It was only verbally agreed last year. Also, he's worried because of investments. American tech firms have been investing in the UK, and they have promised billions more in investments in AI and in GPUs and in all those data centers. And he's particularly worried because the UK shot itself in the foot by going ahead with Brexit. So growth rate in the UK has been nearly zero for the last many years. And they desperately need that investment to start growth again. Because without growth, they're not even able to provide welfare, neither defense. So, but he has not gotten the message that by flattering the US, by being a supplicant, you're not going to get it. Because as I explained in my earlier video on Trump's about turn in Greenland, he only gives up or pulls back when he gets a pushback. Only when China pushed back, when the bond market pushed back on tariffs, or now on the Greenland issue, when the US stock market yesterday dipped, only then he put back. Keir Starmer is not getting that message. Europeans also have, I think, slowly realized this. And I think they're realizing that because even people like the German Chancellor Merz was saying that, look, we need to figure out things on our own. And so Germany is also increasing its defense expenditure. Unfortunately, there are some like Keir Starmer who are not getting the message, and even the Italian Meloni. But I think by and large, Europe is now going to move in a direction of autonomy, and Europe has the capacity. As I had shown you last time also, if you look at the GDPs of these countries, sure, US is at 32 trillion, but Europe is not far behind at 26.5 trillion, just 15 to 20% less. And below that is China at 18.5 trillion. And then much below that is India at 3.7 and Russia at 2.5. So Europe is not far behind in total GDP. Even in population, Europe is about 500 million people. It is much more than the US is 335 million. 335. So it's much more populated than the US. So it has the population, and definitely it's much more populous than, for example, Russia, which is around 130 million population. So Europe has the GDP. Europe also has the defense expenditure already. If you look at European defense expenditure, it's almost 700 billion, 693 billion. US is around 900 billion or 1 trillion. So it's about 30% less than the US, 25-30% less. It can quickly bulk up and increase its defense expenditure. China's is at about 300 billion, but of course, this you can kind of double this because China's purchasing power is more. That is 300 billion in China can get you more because it's a developing country. So the PPP for soldiers' salaries, officer salaries, and R&D, etc., is you can get more R&D out of the same dollar value. And it spends almost as much on its internal security as it does on its external security. So some of that can also be added into its overall defense expenditure. So, so China is a little bit lower than these countries, but so Europe has the capacity. And as I explained in my AI video, that Europe also has the technology. Now, Europe does not have a lot of AI technology, but it won't take long, for Europe to ramp up on AI. Because as I explained, AI is going to completely change the rules of warfare, the speed, the scale of warfare, also the robots and autonomous vehicles. You're going to see a totally different world of warfare within 5 to 10 years. And Europe has the capacity to ramp up because it has some of the best defense firms, BAE Systems, it has, Airbus, it has all of those Rheinmetall, all those great historic firms like Krupp's, which Hitler used, which Germany used in both the World Wars. So it has all that. Europe has the paraphernalia. Even Italy has some great defense firms. So across, Netherlands has some amazing defense firms. The Swedes and the Norwegians and the Danes. I mean, some of the best submarines in the world are made by Germany and Sweden. So I think Europe, once it gets down to it, will be able to ramp up. But problem with defense expenditure is it takes a while. It takes 5 years, sometimes 10 years, 15 years to catch up. So it will take a while. And that's why I think Europe is a bit scared. Also because they don't want to cut their welfare expenditures. But they, I think, will do it because reality will force them, you see. As realism says, gravity forces you, and so does security. Europeans are very worried right now also because they have not been able to help Ukraine the way Ukraine was being helped when America was involved about 2 years ago. Europeans have found that they have not been able to put up enough money. Ukraine is suffering because of that. Russia is pressing hard because of that. But I don't think they should be too worried. They have to only give more money because America is willing to sell arms. Well, America is not willing to provide free arms. That means the load on Europe is only a financial load. It's not a military load. That is, Europe is not capable right now of making all the weapons that Ukraine needs. But okay, maybe it will in 5 to 10 years. For now, it has to put up the money. Maybe it has to do a bit of deficit financing. It can do that. And the fear that Russia will invade EU or NATO or any of the European countries, I think that's overblown. Russia is right now suffering terribly. Russia is suffering terribly because Trump himself was quoting some numbers today in his speech. They're probably those that CIA and NIA has provided him. He said about 30,000 casualties every month. That's about 350,000 casualties in a year. If you multiply it by the 4 years that Ukraine war has gone on, that's something like 1.3, 1.4 million casualties. Now, he didn't specify whether these were Russian casualties or combined Russian-Ukrainian. But even if they are combined, the majority of these is Russian. The reason we can say that confidently is that I've looked at some of the intelligence agencies' assessments, but also because Russia is the attacker. The attacker always loses more men. And Russia's strategy always also has been to use bulk attacks, infantry assaults, which always cause more casualties. So Russia has definitely suffered more, and Russia has suffered economically as well. The Russian economy has suffered because they have not been able to export the amount of minerals and oil and even weapons that they used to, because all of it is getting consumed in the war there. They have not been also been able to import because of the sanctions from the West, any of the high-tech stuff that they used to. So they are dependent now mostly on China for imports, Chinese goods, and they export also mostly oil, etc., and minerals to China. So Russia, despite its huge size on the map, has become an appendage of China. It has become a vassal of China. China has even taken over Russia's spheres of influence. For example, Russia had a huge sphere of influence in Central Asia. Now that is the Chinese sphere of influence. Chinese economy and political influence has grown massively in Central Asia. So slowly, even in the Caucasus, where Russia was powerful, it could not intervene in the Azerbaijan-Armenia war. And other countries have entered, whether it was Turkey or Israel or others have entered to influence that space. So Russia has been the biggest loser. So it's unlikely that Russia is going to invade Europe. They need not worry too much. Their main worry seems to be actually about the Baltic states, that is Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. They fear that Russia could intervene there because it's next door to Russia. Russia has historically at some points occupied and controlled those territories. But I think even that fear is overblown because the moment they do that, the Russians will get into a conflict with the Europeans, and they don't want that. They're not in a position to do that economically or materially or manpower-wise. So even if the European fear is that we don't want to upset the US, and because the US will then not turn up for the Baltic states. Well, the US may still not turn up. Maybe the message has not gone across to the Europeans that, hey, the US is now not a reliable partner. But I think the Europeans themselves are strong enough for those three states. And Russia itself is not strong enough right now to attempt that. So I doubt that should be a big fear. And I think reality is going force the Europeans into becoming a hard power again. This might be good news for India, because these Europeans, Canadians will have to get together, and they'll also have to get together with the other countries, as I explained, in East Asia, that is Japan, and countries such as South Korea, Taiwan, because those countries also have good technology and large GDPs. And together they will be able to make the weapon systems, the AI warfare that is necessary. And India will not be able to import cleanly from the US because of unreliability. India will also not be able to import from Russia anymore, because Russia itself will be dependent on China. China is the only one with the money and the technology to go ahead with AI warfare, and China will not want its latest technologies to come to India. So India will have to get close to this camp, as I explained, the European East Asian camp, in order to get the weapon systems that it needs. So we're going to see a slight rearrangement of the world order, even if another president comes after Trump who is not as anti-European. We may not see a return to the old world order, because now, once shaken, the trust of the Europeans and the East Asians will be difficult to earn, and they will probably also want to be close to America because it increases their strength, but not be totally reliant. They will develop more hard power, more weapons industries over time. Whether Trump is succeeded by J.D. Vance or somebody else, or even by a Democratic president, the old world also probably is not going to come back. We are going to see some rearrangement of the world order. So keep watching, and I'll keep bringing new stuff to you. Thank you.